Hello and welcome to the Graeyzone. My name is Silas.
I'm Rob.
I'm Raouf.
And I'm Christian, and today we're talking about the wishes of the dead and do they matter? I, for one, think they do matter for some absurd reasons. And when I say absurd, I mean as in absurdism.
All right, well, I can't wait for you to elaborate on that.
By absurd, I mean absurdism.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It's an ism.
Oh, okay.
So it's something that Albert Camus talked a lot about, which it has a lot to do with kind of things that are kind of fucked up. And because of that, you have to take life one step at a time. And because he recognizes that things don't really matter, he's like, well, you gotta make things matter then.
Okay.
What, inherent value? Inherent value?
What do you mean by that?
Inherent value means that in and of itself it produces value. Which means that if that coffee had inherent value, that means that in and of itself it produces value to me.
The opposite. This has absolutely no value, but that means it has value to me.
Okay, so it's applied value.
You have to.
Yes.
It has value to you because you say it has value to you.
And
So it's applied.
Camus talked a lot about how life is a struggle, but it is the only struggle worth living. And so in his opinion, suicide was one of the worst things you could do because it opted out of that struggle.
It's really close.
Fair.
Suicide is the worst thing you can do because it takes away the struggle, which is being human, to its fullest.
Okay, so wait, is suicide worse than murder because you're taking away someone else's struggle in
I
murder?
think actually, yes.
So you're opting someone else out is
Because
less severe
yes.
than opting yourself out.
But is
Yes.
that good for that guy then?
But that guy continued to live his life,
Yeah.
right?
No, I mean the other guy that got murdered.
Yeah.
He got a cheat
he
code out of
was,
it.
he was living his life with full intent, and then someone else took it from him. So
Yeah.
that's better. That's still better than suicide.
It's
but
better
what does it say
in
about the
general.
murderer? What does it say about the murderer?
Oh, he's a
It does
an
say
asshole.
something, but it is still better than suicide because at that line you are still
It's
like
better to be a murderer than to commit suicide.
Yes.
In this guy's flesh.
It's better to be a murderer
Yes,
for the other people.
Do you know there's a short story a lot of people read in early college called The Stranger?
No, I don't
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
There is a Cure song called "Killing an Arab," actually, which is
I'm sorry, Raouf.
it is specifically about the story "The Stranger" because in the story a Frenchman kills an Arab on the beach.
As happened quite often, but I'll get ahead of myself.
And it's just this like random murder.
Yes.
And Camus like, well, that's bad, but if things don't mean anything, at least there was value in the fact that that man had a life.
Okay.
It,
And the guy who murdered him still has value because he's still alive.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Just getting more
So
detail.
that was a nice little tangent, but
That's the Graeyzone, man.
That is the Graeyzone.
We are the nice little tangent.jpg.
I love it. So, do the wishes of the dead matter?
So Christian says yes for absurdism. Boof, what do you have to say about
I
it?
think the wishes of the dead matter to a certain point. For me, if I'm thinking of a will, for example, I would say yes. They matter because at some point, someone has to divvy this stuff up. And why not leave it to the person
Who owned the
who
stuff?
owned the stuff? Anything else is going to become very arbitrary.
Boof and I have very aligning opinions because I think the will matters depending on what's in the will. Like willing the way I have a very weird opinion on burial, but willing the way your body is dealt with is different in my opinion. But your value, your belongings and possessions, I believe that will matters. And then after that, it's like case by case, instance by instance, what actually matters. That's opinion.
But I do have a very callous opinion when it comes to body disposal, how some works are treated afterwards, but we're going to have to set some parameters before I start talking about that stuff.
I think you and I align a lot.
My question for that is, why is the body any different than any other possession?
I would argue because...
It's you. That's why you're
But
autonomous.
in that sense... Wait.
Go ahead, he's talking.
Okay.
Well, I would say the body at that point only has a certain amount of value, which I know Rob feels more passionately about, so I might let him just say that stuff. But your washing machine is still a machine that washes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Regardless if you're dead or not. and surely someone might be able to watch things with it after you're gone.
Right.
It's wasteful to like basically throw out a house because the person who owned it is dead.
Yes.
Wherein a body is waste.
You know, this is only
Well,
this is
not
a,
necessarily though, because would it be?
I'm also not saying to just throw bodies in the trash can.
Oh no, I know. But
We'll get more
It's-
minute on that later.
if somebody wanted their body preserved though, and the family was like, "Yeah, let's get that body preserved," like I don't mean like burying it in.
No, that's where I said it depends on the term of disposal. Because in my
Okay.
opinion, if you want to cremate your body and have a thing, an urn, go nuts. If you want to plastize your body and have a fucking statue, go nuts.
That's
because
what I mean.
It's not a drain on other resources. But I also think, well, we'll get into the more minute details. But I also think the organs should be taken and used out of the plastized
What
body.
if I were to want to have my organs put into jars and formaldehyde and kept?
Well,
No, I don't think so. I don't agree with that.
Hey,
because your organs have inherent value to people who are still alive.
Yeah, but so does my house. You could give my house to somebody that has low income.
Yeah, but I don't know. I have a
no, but like I said, that starts once you start
that's where
thinking
it's
like
like-
that. That's where things start to become very arbitrary.
Yeah.
and you're like, at some point, the buck has to stop with
Which-
someone when it comes to divvying
Yes,
stuff up.
it's my opinion of like okay, if you want, then you can donate your organs to your family, but what are they going to do with them?
right.
Right? I mean, I guess they could preserve them,
Well, like, what's the point?
but I guess it becomes a moral dilemma in my opinion. And yes, you could give a house to a homeless person, but they can't afford that house anyways.
But that is something. See, the problem with that is a homeless person might not be able to afford a organ transplant, anyways. Though, too.
But that's a different argument because
It
I have
is.
a different opinion on healthcare.
You're right. Healthcare is a different argument entirely, and we shouldn't really be putting this into it. So let's
Okay, yeah.
continue.
Before we get too deep, let's silence.
There's an elephant in the room.
Let's get Silas's
Hi, I am
opinion.
Elephant. I think that the wishes of the dead don't matter, alright? But that's why they mean something to people when they fulfill it.
So you're on my side.
A little bit. So, like, but, like, here's the thing.
I
So,
thought you said they do matter.
well, I was thinking about it.
But they mean
No, not you.
Oh,
They mean something.
So wait, explicitly, do they matter or don't they matter?
They matter.
Okay, thank you. Go.
okay. So they don't matter in the long run, right? When I die, what you do with my body is beyond me, alright? I could say that I want this huge, extravagant display where my body is shot into the atmosphere on a rocket, and then when I actually die, you just throw me in a well.
Okay.
I wouldn't know.
But beyond just what happens with your body, what about the other wishes? I.e.,
Well,
will
and so
testament.
and that goes to the second part. All right, when somebody actually does fulfill it, it's a sign of respect. All right, what you do with the dead body doesn't matter, but the fact that you're fulfilling the wishes means that you're respecting them as a human being who once lived. All right,
to the environment.
and it's the ceremony that we hold and the wishes that we hold that go in line with the fact that whatever a human wants for themselves is inherently a value that other people recognize. What you want, Christian, with your body when you die,
And my
hopefully
assets.
later, and your assets,
And everything in my will and trust.
should be respected. Okay? Now they don't matter. I don't care what happens to your money when you die. You shouldn't either because you're dead. But the fact that we're going to fulfill it means that we respect the fact that you held that opinion at one point, and we want to continue fulfilling that so that other people know that we're not heartless.
See, in my opinion, to kind of bounce off of that, one of the reasons I do think things matter is that if we take the opinion of a live person and we say, what do you think you should do with your money? And they said we should do this, right? Normally you wouldn't like say, no, we're not allowing you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If a person was of sane mind before they died and they wrote their trust, preferably over a will, when they wrote that, whatever's on there should be treated as if they were living. It's called a living trust for a reason.
I don't disagree with.
I don't either. But
My
inherently,
thing
that
is
does,
burial, but anyways, go on.
But
Inherently-
I understand that your thing is burial, which to me is odd because I view the body as an object still. But
inherently, those things don't matter because in and of themselves, if you isolate a person dying and everything that they owned, all right, whatever happens to that person afterwards is beyond the things that are here, right? But the fact that they should be respected, I agree on, all right, and that just shows that we have a heart as human beings.
Let me ask you guys a question. I think the burial thing's going to become a big topic, so let me give you guys a smaller angle before we go into all that.
Okay.
When you say respect, right? How much respect would you say is enough respect? Obviously, this is going to be
respects.
I know anything we say is going to be a bit arbitrary, but let me. So when we say, for example, we want to respect this person's heritage, his legacy, blah blah blah, right? But at what point do you have to say, okay, we've done enough? And let me give you an
And
example.
that's up to the family.
Well, yes,
And if there is no family, that's up to their designated advocate in their will.
Well, let's let Boof give your example.
let me give you this example. It's a little tangential, but it'll give you an idea of something that goes beyond the body or the very specific possessions of a person, right?
Okay.
So in Japan, if a voice actor dies, whatever they were voice acting, be it animation or video games, when that voice actor dies, oftentimes what they'll do is just retire the character because the voice actor is dead. So
Okay.
that character will no longer be involved in the plot.
Okay.
Do you feel that something like that, because that goes beyond the immediate possessions of someone and goes into something that the
They're
person
associated
introduced, they're associated with, they
They're
introduced
acting,
into
yes.
the culture, do you think something like that is going overboard?
I don't think so.
Actually, I don't, but because there's a logical point to it. But I'm going to look up something and then
I think
make a counter argument. But
I think as Americans we feel different because most of our stuff is dubbed over, and Americans are very loosey goosey.
But even still, like with the Joker and Mark Hamill, if he were to suddenly pass, God forbid, then do we retire the Joker from
No,
that?
because the Joker has
'cause,
multiple
yeah,
incarnations.
it's different Jokers. I think if Luffy from One Piece in real life dies, I don't want to hear a different person voice act him. It's odd. To
Yes.
me, it's odd, and he's gonna die before that fucking show ends.
But what about Uncle Iroh from Avatar?
Uncle Iroh from Avatar, they were in the middle of the show, and I think that they needed to
Right, but
continue it.
couldn't they just write him?
I forget what his name is, but he actually had an incredible cast of roles that I would not want to see. I like the idea that there is a revolving door with this. If somebody dies, somebody else, a new character is created because of that. That keeps things fresh, I think.
It does.
For all but the most iconic of characters that need to be there.
Well, that's what I was getting at, because that's, and again, anything we're going to say is going to sound arbitrary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you get to a point where, okay, you've introduced this thing into the culture, you've introduced this character to the culture, you die, you guys sound like you think, for the most part, that character should be retired. But if you're talking about something that is too, like you mentioned Luffy, right?
Yeah.
And that's a long-running series, and that show it would be
It-
very
it's
hard to
actually
keep
probably
going on.
going to have no logical conclusion in
And
animation.
it's supposed to end in 4 years.
But that's what he
Sure.
says.
X to
No,
doubt.
I hope.
Press X to doubt.
But point being, that's if you retire that character, the show might very well either be over or go in a radically different direction. So do you think that's fair to
I feel
the
like
culture?
it is okay to finish off what was already created, but I don't think I actually like the idea of finishing it off, but not creating something new.
Yeah, I
just
think
ending it.
if the character dies and you're close to the logical conclusion of the show, you should finish it, because otherwise you'll never have a finished piece of
The
work.
actor.
Yeah, or the actor, sorry. But if you're like the first season out of a 5-part season, then I think you should find a way to rewrite the lead. Or the character.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot different with the lead. It's very hard with the lead because usually it comes from a book and the book already exists and you already know, but I just think it's awkward.
But I do agree, especially when it comes to original video animations and things like that, like something like Cowboy Bebop. If
It'd be so odd to hear someone else voice Spike.
Like in
Yes.
like the last 2 episodes, that would be ridiculous.
No, it's weird. It's very nuanced because last 2, it's like we kind of just need the conclusion. But if it was like 6 episodes, I really wouldn't want. It'd be so fucking odd.
Well, so is there a
It'd be
hard
so
line,
hard.
or is it just like
It's not a. It's like in my opinion, it's
It's
like a
situation.
feel-
yeah,
it's
well, like
a
I
feeling
said,
thing,
it's going to sound arbitrary.
But it is also a matter of respect because I don't think that we can just say it's odd because people get fired all the time.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I feel like, especially when it comes down to long-running characters who are associated particularly with a particular person and were created for that person, that's why I think Japan is a different perspective, because a lot of things here are dubbed over.
Yeah,
But
right.
in Japan, a lot of things are created with particular people in
In mind.
mind.
Yeah.
Just like what was that role?
There's
There's like a lot of roles where like Morgan Freeman, like the character was actually created because somebody wanted Morgan Freeman to be in the
Yeah.
film.
Typecasted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Podcasting.
See, that's I picked this particular example as well because I think this is where I might illustrate what I meant when I said I might be a bit more callous than you guys, because from my perspective, that character has been introduced to the culture, and in a sense, they kind of belong to the collective at this point.
but
And
I
I
also-
think it's very drastic to
I agree
completely...
with that. I feel that there's like if there's a universe that you're creating, whoever voice acts is kind of irrelevant. The character itself
It is not.
It's
a
not.
lot of characters are made
inherently isn't.
by the voice actor.
Spike
Oh,
in
absolutely. I
Cowboy
agree with
Bebop
that.
would not be Spike without Steve Bloom.
Right. I'm agreeing with that. All right, but that's because we find value in that. It's because the actor's doing their job perfectly, right? But if it were just any X character, right, even not just a main role, but like a side role, even a supporting role, it's callous of me to say it in the words of Boof, but I feel like the character in the universe is separate than the voice actor, even though the voice actor is.
It really depends, because sometimes it's not.
Oh, I get it. I get it.
like-
I'm not.
Like I actually think that with Carrie Fisher, I think that Carrie Fisher should have been retired much earlier and not had all those
Yeah.
extra bits, because she died, and I think her as a mainstay of the Star Wars series, it's important to show that respect, that she made the Star Wars series what it was. She
Right,
was
and-
one of those people that did.
And then they kept using her image post-mortem to
Yes.
finalize the series, right? I didn't agree with that at a compassionate level, as a respectful level, but in the terms of like the universe of Star Wars, I understand why they had to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say, like,
I
I
think-
feel very callous about
I
these
feel
kinds
a
of
very
things.
small amount of fixing things, ending things is okay, because then you, in a way, then you're honoring them. But I do very much see that media as an extension of our world to some capacity, unless you're doing something which is, if you're doing something which is very art house, that's different. And when you have conceptual villains, I also feel that's different. My example for conceptual villains would be if you have the evil Dark Lord Sauron in Lord of the Rings, and the actor dies. Sauron's a conceptual villain, and also there's a book, so that's also different. But if you had something like Sauron in something else, it's not really Sauron, which is, or like the actor, which is
Like, could you imagine someone else acting as Luke?
No.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't.
If Mark Hamill died, would you want someone to fill in for Luke? It'd be fucking... It
would be weird. It would be so...
My
it would be
thing is,
weird.
it's super nuanced in...
it depends on the role.
It really depends, but it's super nuanced. Like, some characters, I couldn't give two shits if they revoiced them.
Yeah.
It'd be odd. It'd sound super weird one season to the next.
But you get over it.
But
you know,
then
whatever.
some, it's like, it'd be so unimaginably strange that I couldn't deal with it.
I like the idea of having some cultural respect for these people, though. I mean, I think we might disagree on that, Booth. The idea ticks well with me.
I don't even know if mine's cultural respect, or if I just can't, I don't like how, I don't want it to be that different. I think it's too drastic of a change. And if you can find someone who's close in voice acting, like, my example was AC/DC, right? Their lead singer died, they found a guy who sounded exactly the same, and they did Back in Black, and everyone's like, I thought he died. It went on, and
It became
now
a classic.
Now he's
The-
more iconic.
Yes.
But they sounded exactly, like,
Right.
they sounded alike. It didn't change their style. If you went from Luffy's voice to my voice, obviously, they'd try to find someone closer, but, like, how odd would that be?
And then I also do think if we are going to take this on a cultural level, especially with somebody who had a direct hand in creation, it depends on the people closest to them in the field and them themselves. I feel like with AC/DC, I feel like the guy in AC/DC probably wouldn't. What was his name?
I don't remember their names.
Probably
I just looked him
would
up, too.
not have been. No, I don't want you to perform anymore.
No, yeah. It's very different. I'm just saying, like,
But
I think they did a
But
great
like,
job
I feel like
replacing
they
that.
really did Prince dirty, because Prince specifically did not want a lot of his albums released, because a lot of them were concept pieces and stuff like that. And as soon as they died, the companies jumped on him and like started like salvaging and stripping the stuff. That's why you see his stuff in commercials now.
The original singer for AC/DC, so we'll pay him respect, is Ronald Belford Scott.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Just so
But
we
the
know.
companies actually jumped on the fact that he died and started stripping his music, but that was his
So
creation.
ultimately, what we're saying here is that when you bring it to a media sense or like a popular sense, the idea becomes a little bit muddled. Even though we want to respect, like Japan does. Boof and I are kind of on the same page where it's like it's an image. It's a completely different image at this
Yeah.
point because Carrie Fisher, may she rest in peace, but she wasn't just Leia Skywalker or Leia Skywalker. What was it? Leia Organa or something. I forgot her last name.
I don't know.
because I just
I do actually think that this entire argument is very nuanced
Yeah,
because
we're talking about the
because
media.
like I said,
basically-
mine's not even from the respect point of view.
we're talking in a way about object permanence
Yeah.
in a way because
Yeah.
my argument, I would say, out of respect for the person that created it, they should have a lot of say in it. But then if we think about art pieces, I doubt that many of these artists who made these, like Van Gogh and people like that, would be very comfortable with people spending millions of dollars on them and money laundering.
And that's what I was going to mention too is you mentioned the Prince thing and you put it you use words like salvage and strip like they're vultures.
No,
right?
they are vultures.
Yeah, but let's say for example, the Mona Lisa is a cultural touchstone. Right?
Yes.
There are so many different interpretations of it. It's been fused into different works of media, right?
become memed at
It
this
kind
point.
of belongs to the culture, right? But let's say Leonardo da Vinci rose from the grave and said, "Fuck the Mona Lisa, I'm burning it.
I
You
would
all
let
don't
him.
get to have it."
If Leonardo da Vinci rose from the grave,
whatever you want, Mr. Da Vinci.
In my opinion, if he's alive to
Yeah,
say
let's
no,
say, yeah.
if he's alive to say no, that's his work. It's his to say you can't have it.
Yeah.
Like that's my opinion of it.
No, my opinion
You
is...
you own it. You can tell. I mean, you still have pictures of it. You go fucking jerk off to your culture there. If it's his, he can do whatever he wants with it. He owns it.
So are you saying... I'm saying, okay,
I mean,
let's say theoretically...
there, but
Let's say theoretically you let him burn the original
Yes.
Mona Lisa, because I guess technically that one is his, so to
he
speak.
cannot burn. He cannot direct the order of the burning of the rest. I don't.
But they're
believe-
not-
Okay,
But
okay.
and
So you're
then-
saying there is a line to how
There is a line,
much...
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that is somebody else's. But,
Okay.
But that original piece, that creation is his.
Yeah, it's his
now,
physical
I feel,
possession.
I feel that with
nuts
music
with
and
it.
sound, there is a difference with that because sound by its very self is fleeting and ephemeral, and so you do actually have to capture and record something. But that is a different type of creation and possession than a physical painting. Also, a certain point in which I believe, well, due to Disney, it's like 90 years after an author's death.
thanks, Disney.
I'm thinking more like how something becomes intertwined with the culture at large, right? And it sounds like we're at least somewhat on the same page if you're saying you can't try to strip all the influence
No,
the Mona
no.
Lisa had
Yeah,
on the broader
but
culture.
I'm saying
just
if-
because the guy who died would say so.
If he wants to get rid of the original, that's his original.
Yes.
He can do
Okay.
whatever the hell he wants with it.
But then we have copies and
But
copies of copies.
The copies are not his possession. The image, the original image that's being copied, is technically his copyright. But I don't think he has the right to take that from other people.
Okay. So the influence he had on the
Yeah.
culture, you say, would stay regardless of what he wanted.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, because
Now-
it's already there.
Now, I
He
guess when
painted it, and never showed it to anybody.
it comes down to things like sound, though, and voice, Prince's voice is actually in all those things.
Yeah.
On one hand, I like the idea of being able to use people's things with, regardless of copyright, because even if we look at artists that are still alive, there are often times where they want like a certain creative work to be able to use their work, and the company says
Yep.
no.
WMG, baby. What a music group.
On the other hand, sometimes they don't want their stuff used, and the company says, well, these people have bought the rights to it, and so there's a weird dilemma there. I don't like the idea that a company can take something, especially with marketing. I don't like
What-
marketing with somebody
Real
else's
quick,
work.
what's Prince's name?
I don't know his real name.
I'm
But
gonna
real
find out.
quick, for $10,000 a month, I can use any WMG song I want without permission or consent from the artist, which to me is odd because I don't think they're getting that money. Do you think they're getting the royalty? It's a library. How do you know which song I'm
They're
using?
getting some library, yeah.
But it's the cut isn't right.
Okay, so real quick.
I should be able to DM an artist and say, hey, can I use your music? Get permission, use the music in whatever I want, and not have an issue. But I can have direct consent from an artist, and the company owner can tell me, no, you can't use that song. Even if Eminem told me I could use a song in a video, and then whoever records came after me,
and it's
I have
because,
no right.
in a way, and I guess this is their choice, though, even though it's kind of at gunpoint.
You kind of get pigeonholed into
But
it.
here's
Yeah,
the thing.
it is at gunpoint. It is being pigeonholed into it, but the artists have given away
That's
their
the recording
rights to
industry,
it.
and now we're on a different
and
argument.
That's horrible.
No, yeah. So what? Just to kind of bounce off that, the Prince Rogers Nelson is Prince's real name, right?
Yes.
Prince Rogers Nelson created the image of Prince, right? And then utilized that as his
Brand, identity.
and then a record label bought that essentially, right? So
Well-
now Prince,
No, it's the reverse. He cultivated his image through a record company,
right?
And that's-
but they own him though.
separated.
But that's the thing, they own him though. They own
Not
his
like,
brand.
no, specifically, he started that way, and then he backed off from that, and he was popular enough to be able to back off from it and do his own
Well,
stuff.
okay, so yeah, that's a niche example. But what I'm talking about is any artist that creates their brand and is signed to a record label, their brand is basically owned by that record label, depending on how they do it.
And not just that, but you can argue that a lot of these artists could not get to where they were
Without selling themselves,
without the
basically.
help of advertising, the infrastructure that the record label provides.
Oh, you're right. But after a certain point, if they choose to move away, if somebody chooses to move away from a record label,
Uh-huh.
and then they create something and it can still do well, then that is their own work at that point.
I mean, that's fine.
Because the first part was a mutual collaboration.
Yes.
And now it is no longer mutual.
it depends on the deal that they sign, though. Because, Britney Spears, her entire life
well,
is,
yes, but-
what do they
Well,
call
most
that
of those
thing?
deals are
Constrained or whatever?
20 years.
She's
They're
going beyond
mostly-
it, too.
Yeah, but
they
if she
extended it.
resigns, that's different.
Okay, so I think we should
We
take a
should
quick
move away
break
from
and
this.
move on. I just have to use the restroom.
Okay.
Okay. We're back from the brass room, or whatever.
I said
The brass room?
I said restroom.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you said that you said it weird.
No, I just don't want people to know I had to use the restroom.
We all use the restroom. And now we're back.
We ate
and-
some frozen waffles and cauliflower.
Yes.
Okay, and we're back. So let's get back to the idea of the average Joe's will and testimony as they die, and whether that matters or not.
So, if you're going to say really the average Joe, it matters somewhat less because we're just talking about a minute gray person that is like a statistic. But if we mean somebody that we know or somebody that other people know that we might not know, then yes, it does.
Well, that's what I mean. Okay, so
I think the average Joe at least knows one person.
yes, the average Joe.
I didn't say Silas didn't say an isolated human who's never seen society in his entire life. I'm pretty sure he doesn't even have a will and
But
testament.
that would not be the average Joe. I feel like when we say the average Joe, we think of some
Joe, the plumber in California.
we all know an average Joe somewhere.
So I think that
A regular person. We're talking about regular people here, guys.
A regular person.
And it shouldn't be regular people that we know because then it's family oriented
It's
and
biased.
everybody's biased.
Right.
no, but
I'm actually still not biased family
I
oriented.
actually
so.
think that's it is bias, and that's where I'm coming from.
Oh, I'm not biased on it. I still have the same
Oh.
opinions on the burials.
No, I didn't mean about the burials. I mean, in general, I think that because we know people, that means it matters.
Right.
I think that somebody's opinion or their wishes after death essentially extends, for the most part,
To the people
until
that they
the
know.
last people that they know died, if they care about it.
Right.
And now, if those last people that they know died, and they imparted onto impressed onto somebody else that they should care about it, then it still matters because it matters in the fact that somebody cares about it. But if an unnamed individual were to die, and I don't mean unnamed like
Yeah.
they weren't given a name.
So you're going off not the tangent, the idea that is pretty commonly stated as you're alive until the last person says your name.
Yes.
Okay.
You could be resurrected in that sense of if you wrote a book and the book is put away in some dark cupboard
And
somewhere.
post-mortem it becomes popular.
And post-mortem it becomes popular, then somebody is going to care about that person's wishes much more if they find a will and testament than if somebody were just to find a will and testament and that book were to never
But
get
like
popular.
popularity aside.
No, but popularity is important.
Right, but
because-
we just talked about that. We kind of covered that with our previous tangent with famous people, celebrities,
Are you
and
talking
such.
about opinions now, or are you talking about will? Because I'm gonna go
wishes.
I'm gonna guess that if you're being resurrected, your wishes have either already been fulfilled or have already been ignored.
Yeah.
You know, like if I die and then 10 years later someone finds the Google Doc I drew of your face and now I'm famous. After 10 years, I hope my body's been disposed of and my belongings have been shilled out.
But
But
this,
their wishes might pertain to other things, such as, and I guess this is opinions.
Okay,
but,
yeah, it's because
but
it's like
to me, somebody's wishes is intertwined with their opinions. I have a very biased perspective right now because I don't think I'm thinking about this correctly. I'm going to admit,
Yeah, 'cause-
I
well,
don't think I'm thinking
my thing
about
is,
this in
like,
a real world setting.
if my car, say I left my car to Silas when I died, but for some reason it goes to my sister, and then 10 years later someone finds my will, or finds my picture of you, I'm now famous, they find my will, they find out Silas got screwed out of my car.
Then they might actually.
Then like, maybe now people care, but it's very...
Well, it depends if I care,
well,
first of all.
Yeah, but it's like...
But if you cared and you were the only only person caring, and everybody ignored you, and then all of a sudden he got popular after death, then it would matter.
I'm just
And
saying,
that's
like,
what I get.
I'm saying
yeah.
it's like super niche.
It is niche, but it is pertaining to
Yes,
somebody's wishes.
But that's... Okay, so I'm clarifying for people listening, that's Christian's current argument.
yes, yes, that is.
Let me phrase it this way. All right, there's a line of a family member with the last name Smith. All right, and this specific Smith family has a tradition that they pass down through the generations. Now it gets to Joe Smith. He doesn't marry. He's the last one in the family, and he doesn't have anyone to carry on the tradition that they hold in their family, which is something dumb, like, they have a fork that they pass on to the next generation, right? So Joe has a friend, John Adams. John Adams said, Joe goes to John and is like, hey, can you carry on this tradition? All right. And John says, yeah, sure, absolutely. And Joe, before he passes, gives it to John, right? And then
of course.
Afterwards, Joe dies. John gets rid of the fork.
Yes, he gets rid of it.
Yeah, it doesn't continue the
And
tradition.
then in the example, the guy who died, I already forgot his name, Joe Smith,
Joe Smith.
becomes famous, and people
I'm like, how did you get rid of that? How dare you? How dare you disrespect him?
people now want John Adams to get the fucking fork back. That's
Yes.
the Christian example.
That is the
is
Christian
Said by
example.
Silas, which I just said using a car and in 50 less words.
No, I get it, but like, removed from us, would you care about that? If you just heard about that and John Adams isn't popular, Joe Smith isn't popular, you just heard about the fact that, oh, like, John's your friend, and he's like, yeah, I didn't want to carry that tradition
You
on.
see, the thing is that I don't care about a great many things which are very important to other people. So that kind of invalidates everything.
well, no, but I think what Silas is getting at is because it's removed from us, you can afford to be more philosophical about it.
Yeah, I don't care about the fork. If that's what we're getting at, I don't care about
You don't care about the fork?
No.
it's not. It's not about the fork.
Not the fork!
It's about the idea.
I don't care
of
about the
fork.
tradition of the fork. I don't give a fork about their tradition.
Technically, John Adams didn't give a fork either.
Hey, actually, I have a question because I don't know, and I just realized I don't know those.
Yes.
In Islam, how are people disposed of?
Well, Christian.
Oh, recording podcast is fun. Why don't we do it more? Holy shit.
Oh, God
Well, Christian.
I'm crying.
I can't even look at this wavelength right now.
And you want to do this as a video. Remember that.
Oh, God. That's true. So, we're gonna pretend like I didn't just look that up to sound smarter. And basically, for the
You
audience,
can actually continue.
yes,
right now.
I am. It's too late. So I had to look that up, which is why everyone is laughing so hard. But for the sake of the audience, because everyone in the room now knows, basically, what Muslims do is that, to make it short, they cleanse the body, they bury it very quickly, within
they're
24
wrapped.
hours. They're wrapped in linen, and they're supposed to be buried facing Mecca. There.
Good job.
Now everyone knows.
Are you leaving all the laughing in?
Yes.
Oh, this is a great podcast if you're listening, guys.
So, why did you ask?
I was just curious because I didn't know, and I knew the thing which Silas just looked up, but
As well,
I
on
knew
the
that Christians were buried in a certain, used to be buried in a certain direction, and it was very important back in those times. And then
I
there
also
are
knew that too, just saying.
there are
Well, guys.
a lot of other burial customs, such as during the classical period, Greeks would bury their dead with 2 drachma on their eyes.
Yeah,
for
so they
passage
could pay
for,
passage to the Sphinx.
Sharon!
Or what's the river Styx?
Well,
Which I guess
yeah,
traditions then really come from superstition. Of like, well, we have to do it a certain way and respect the dead because otherwise they won't get through to the end, right? Say it. Come on. What do you say? We're cackling over here.
But you just called Greek mythology superstition.
Okay, all right.
Which implies
All right.
implying
Christianity being real.
Okay, this is gonna be bad. Let's just glaze over to this.
Okay, so
We don't need more tangents.
my point is that rituals of the dead and respecting the dead come from the idea that if you weren't, then the dead weren't going to go to some form of paradise in whatever religion it is, right?
well, I think that's partial and that's an evolution of it. But Robert, I think, has the anthropological answer.
Yeah, they can, something that I learned in an anthropology class when learning about human evolution is they talked about when did people go from being in groups strictly for survival to more like a civilization, and they can date it back, and they essentially say that the first burials are when they think that people actually started to care about each other, and like because they would take the time out of, like, you know, back then
You die, you just left it there.
yeah, but also, you're like digging a hole is a laborious task when you don't have modern day tools.
Especially digging at a certain amount deep.
Most of the time, early hominids were pretty much starving. You know, it's not like they ate. They didn't go to McDonald's, so it was a laborious task to take the time to dig and bury an elder. But they did it, and then that's what they theorized was like the first sign of community. And people started living together too.
And that's also partially due to disease and animals as well,
Yep.
though. Like, there is a practical application, which is if you have a bunch of bodies laying around.
The other signifying factor that it was more community than just that was they buried the bodies and in their homes and live with them
Yeah.
to keep it like part of the family, which is disgusting. But
That's very
I kind of like that a little bit.
Oh, don't
Like,
dig there. Grandma's already there.
it was very Gacy of them.
Yes.
But
Yes.
imagine if all of our homes, right? Like, if people had more solitary homes.
Yeah. They used to, they didn't.
I mean, old mansions do. Old mansions have graveyards in their backyard because it's like a family's home.
I went to
We have dead bodies under this house.
Do we?
I went to a Henry Ford estate, not the Henry Ford estate, but a place he owned, and he had a body buried under the housekeeper's body was buried underneath the house, which that's not that old.
Well, this is interesting now because if we're taking this more practical route, then the wishes of the dead don't factor into this burial process because that doesn't really matter.
As in fact, what I said earlier is, it is the wishes of the people that know them. And in that sense, we are skewed because we are Americans and hyper-individualistic, but in other cultures, like Japan, everybody is cremated in Japan unless there is some special, like,
Wish or whatever.
circumstances. But everybody is cremated, and they have a much more collectivized culture. To them, if an individual was like, no, I want my body, like, done this with, that would be itself rude. That would be bad. because you're not giving in to... The individual is imposing their will on a bunch of other people.
Right.
So the wishes of the dead do matter to me, but whether those wishes matter to society is different.
Well, that's what I was getting at with my example when we were talking about the voice acting thing, to make a very broad point. Essentially, do we need to drop everything that we're doing because some dude died?
Well, you see, but I think this is where our points are conflicting. In Japan, that is how they feel, and there's a sense of collective respect.
Yes.
But because we are hyper-individualistic here,
Yes.
we think of what's best for me. And in that case, if you had written the character, you'd be like, no, I want to make money still off of this character. It doesn't give a fuck that this guy died.
But
That's how you're looking at this. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but it does...
It's callous.
It is very
went through
callous.
it,
this fucking shows my Gaijin.
Also, it's not just Japan. It's almost every Asian country holds almost over 85% cremation rate.
And it's due to large populations and cultural things that have extended from large populations. There's a lot to do with, like, China was super agricultural. It has to do with the fact that cultivating rice is a very labor-intensive task, and you would have much larger families because of that.
China has the lowest cremation rate out of all the Asian countries.
Really?
Yeah, sitting. This one's from 2008, so it's 2014, so it's the oldest, but it's 45%. Japan has the highest at 99.97.
They do have less space as well.
Yeah. That's part of my...
China actually has the Gobi Desert, so you have large tracts of land, and that actually makes sense as well with like Egypt. You
have a lot of dead space.
Yes.
Literally and physically.
Yes.
But in places where there's less, you need to be able to preserve the environment and not attract disease and other things like that.
There's a thing, it's called, I don't want to get too tangenty, but it's called carrying capacity of land. And it's basically how much 1 square foot of land can provide and how many people can be in it, like, logistically. And Japan has a very low carrying capacity because it's so damn small and there's so many people that, like, literally a square foot in Japan is so much harder to give up for a burial than it is in a place like Russia, where you have square mileage
I'm curious,
of
could
nothing.
you see what the royal family does? Because that would tell us a lot.
The royal family of Japan?
The Emperor's family.
I was looking up the other royal family.
That's what I thought you were asking.
The royal Japan
I'm sure that the royal family is buried. But the Emperor's family, I'm curious about to
that's just
see
very
if
detailed.
this will tell us a lot more.
I would...
Because if they bury, then it is a class thing.
Yeah, it is more class. I mean...
Okay, so they do have a burial tradition, but recent-ish, in 2013, a Japanese emperor broke tradition and got cremated instead.
Oh,
Okay.
So
it
he's
is
setting
taken
an
away from
example.
It is a changing...
Yep.
But they also feel that monarchy is very different than other monarchies worldwide.
You said that. You said the Japanese royal family. I was like, they still have those?
Yes. That monarchy is very different because they very much feel like they are the voice of the people.
Oh, okay.
So that they need to lead the people
By example.
By example, as opposed to... I mean, I think the Queen still leads by example to an extent, but
She's
Prince
very-
Andrew, on the other hand, time of day,
Yes.
is not... Hopefully is not leading by example.
No. He's leading by
but this
example.
this Japanese example is interesting to me because, okay, so now we're dealing with very practical concerns of space,
Yes.
right? In terms of burial. But let's say some Japanese dude was like, I want to be buried. That's in my will. That's what I want happen
Is that the
to
only
happen
thing he
with my
wants?
body.
This is the only thing he wants. It is well.
We'll say for the sake of argument, yes. Because
Yeah.
you're going to get into the, he has all these other things. But he's like, sell off
This
all
is
my
what I want.
assets. I want you to climb a mountain and, dynamite blast a hole in it to bury my body in the cave.
As deep as it can go.
Yes.
Well, let us say yes. This is for whatever reason, this is the most important thing to him. Well,
I'm really curious the long game
road.
reason.
The long
It
road.
happened.
The long road that he took to care so much about being buried. Because remember, in his society, that's not normal.
Right.
This is the plot of an anime.
So my question, though, is, now that we're thinking very practically, and this is what I mean by arbitrary limits a lot of the time, right? At this point, if you're the authorities, you look at this man's request, and you think to yourself, we can't give it up. We can't give this space up for you. So, at that point, do the wishes of the dead supersede the good of the majority? Or the...
In this case, no, but I think it does come down specifically to culture. I mean, as most things do. Now, I just thought of an interesting globalization thing. I know globalization is generally it's not necessarily the worst, it's not necessarily the best, but what if, like, globalizing, if people wanted to be buried, we take a space of empty land, and I mean like the Sahara Desert,
Like
uninhabitable
empty
wasteland, and we were to just build giant mausoleums in areas like that, like deep underground mausoleums.
Aside from the
There would be-
economic and
bring
the
back the
cost of that.
catacombs.
Yeah, aside from the cost of that, that would be interesting. But then
There is a cost, but
anthropology 1,000 years in the future is like, yeah, there's 100 square miles with just dead people from all over the world.
but actually, I feel like that would be the for your consideration.
Yeah,
that would be the
I
solution.
was gonna say I actually don't have a problem with that because currently it's uninhabitable. But the only reason, and the argument isn't, well, people won't go with that. But people wouldn't go with that because, well, I can't go to the Sahara Desert and see the grave. But
this is
if you're doing
the
it for
idea
just
of, like,
tradition,
of globalization.
yeah.
Like, in the future, if we start colonizing other planets, the far future, I don't...
Just have one planet
Yo,
that's just like
I don't see an
cemetery.
issue with taking uninhabitable land and creating a giant mausoleum for all people.
That's where my issue comes in when I say they're wasting land. It's habitable land in viable areas. Like, what was it called? The one we talked about earlier, the graveyard.
The one in Arlington.
Not in Arlington. No.
Yeah.
Gettysburg.
It was Gettysburg. I believe that's the Arlington Cemetery.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't. What I meant by not in Arlington, I mean it's not in Arlington, Texas.
no, it's the Arlington. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Aside.
That's usable land. That's literally just now a giant cemetery.
Now,
also
with
be
that as
considered,
well,
but-
though, like, I know some people say that golf courses are useless, but I was talking,
I like golf.
I was talking to our friend Brandon, who has an environmental degree, and at one point he was telling me how golf courses are actually very good for certain areas, particularly in our area, because they are large swaths of grass, which helps with drainage.
Yeah.
And you can do multi-purpose things and say, this area... Like, obviously, some places aren't going to be burying their dead in an area where there's drainage.
Yeah.
But let's say we do it without coffins, right? And
Yeah, okay, I was going to say, like,
So-
real quick, before you get too deep into that, because part of my argument is also the fact that we use formaldehyde in bodies, and coffins that we use don't decompose or they take too long to decompose.
we could do, like, regular wooden coffins.
Yeah. I'm actually
untreated.
much more fine with that, too.
So, you can bury people in places where they are going to decompose naturally, but also the land can... Like, you could... I know it might seem strange to us, but I feel like the solution could be creating golf courses or other and more environmentally...
So we can golf over the dead.
Yeah,
well,
it'll be fun.
I'm
And you could have little stones. You could have, like, you know how they have the, like, little pillars like this?
Yeah.
You could have little ones of those that have a row of QR codes on it, and you could walk up to it and...
Oh, QR code.
Actually, I'm perfectly fine with that because
What a
it's good for the
technological
environment.
feature.
Decomposition is good for the environment, but
Yeah.
the way we bury bodies now doesn't.
Facilitate.
Yeah, it doesn't help that.
See, here's the thing, though,
not
because you
good at
mentioned
basketball.
globalization,
QR
and
codes are like that.
the more
QR code on your headstone.
the thing, see, I'm getting a bit lost here because I feel that what's more likely to happen is because what we're doing now is kind of complicating things, and I feel a big part of globalization is making things more efficient and expedient on a
don't-
global scale.
When I mean globalization,
That's the
I
goal.
mean Yes and no.
Everyone
I
under
feel
the same banner
when-
of stuff.
Yes,
Yes.
everybody under the same banner,
We
but
speak
that
the
doesn't mean
same
that
language. I have a lingua franca.
you don't necessarily need that, especially with how Google translations are going in a way in which I think
Well, let's stay on topic.
All
Okay.
I'm saying is that is one of the stated goals of globalization is
And-
to help make things more efficient.
yes,
And
but
I would think
making things more efficient can still be done without completely culturally gutting people.
But all I'm saying is, I'm thinking it's more likely in this scenario, we're less likely to build giant mausoleums in the Rubicali Desert, and we're probably more likely to actually gravitate the other way towards cremation.
Yeah.
I think that's more likely
I
result.
actually prefer cremation. I'm just saying, as a middle ground, I would be okay with the idea of throwing bodies in a wooden coffin, no formaldehyde, no chemicals, and then burying them. Because obviously, although I don't care about religious aspects, people will not let it go. Therefore, we can never hit a point in the, not ever, but we probably will never hit a point of 99% cremation in the U.S.
Now, I would, with my argument assumes this is 100 years, 200 years, some form of we could say United Earth Directorate or something like that, right?
You just gave the name to the government.
If 200 years from now, if it's called the United Earth Directorate,
Christian Colorado called it. Yes.
Christian Colorado called it.
It's not me. This is from something.
God
Anyway,
damn it!
anyways,
Spoiler.
if that were to be the case, I would have no problem with taking uninhabitable land, like a desert, building giant catacombs under them, and having people completely preserved. It would be a form of, what is it? It's not a pilgrimage that people, even non-religious people, could make, and by that point, travel would probably be more efficient.
Okay.
You could go someplace and say,
Okay,
I'm going
so-
to walk through this catacombs and view my ancestors.
So hypothetically speaking, yeah, I mean that would be interesting if people were to go to the same place. But in a term of reality, that's a cool theoretical thing to happen, and maybe it might happen.
Yeah, but I feel most people gravitate eventually will gravitate
Well-
towards a form of maximum efficiency.
Right. Why?
For a lot of Asian countries, that is more complicated than what they already do.
Wait,
because
but-
you want things to
But
be.
once we get to a point, see, efficiency only matters until you get to a point in which things are being efficient enough that they no longer matter. Unless
But that's the thing. I think for a lot of people, that would be complicating things.
Oh, so would that mean that if eventually, if we keep making it efficient to the point where everyone's getting cremated, then maybe the wishes of the dead don't matter at that point anymore.
Well, that's
Well,
what.
in regards to the body.
In regards to the body and
Yes.
I mean, that even might bleed into their last wills.
Well, that's if
to
you
where the point where I'd be like, well, I don't care.
Yeah,
Like,
because
do
people
whatever.
will
So
start
my-
to get more blasé about
Well,
these things.
what's his name? Richard Dawkins argues for a 100% estate tax, meaning that anything that you accumulate in your life is ceded to the state when you die.
But the state. Let me ask everyone, Christian, how do you want to die? Like when you die, what do you want with your body?
I honestly, see, I am counter to Robert. I would want my body somehow. Actually, I would rather be frozen. Personally,
Okay, so
Just want to be frozen.
Chris wants to be a popsicle. Okay.
I would rather be frozen 100%.
Do you want to be
Are you
frozen
after the-
while you're still alive?
Are you after frozen to be reincarnated, or are you after the Norwegian freezing the body and then freezing it in liquid nitrogen and then shaking it until it decomposes into dust?
That actually sounds pretty cool, but it
Sounds
was
pretty
the
rad.
former.
It's actually technically the most environmentally friendly way to dispose of a body. Is freezing it in liquid nitrogen,
And shaking it to dust.
shaking it to dust, because cremation still puts off more pollutants than that. It's just so uncost effective to do that.
So, which means it probably isn't environmentally friendly because of the whole transportation issue of getting the liquid nitrogen and having it produced and all that in between, transportation. But by the very act of it, yes. But let's say I don't want to be frozen, right? I like that idea. I like the idea that if I were to have enemies, they would freeze my body and be provided with a hammer to smash me to pieces.
It's a lot of consideration for your enemies.
All right. Boof.
Okay, I will say we're probably gonna have to end on this point because
No,
we're
that's fine. That's
hitting
fine.
an hour.
I want to end on this point, and then I want to tease an idea I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as far as how I want Do you want maximum vanity?
No, I
like
don't-
my
what do you
ideal.
actually want to happen to your body?
My
Go for it. Shoot
super
it. Go.
ideal.
Yep.
I want to be the guy who gets to be preserved. I don't know how, but they would have to preserve me in a way where 10,000 years from now, if humanity's remains are discovered by ancient alien beings, I want to be the one preserved in such a way that they get to fucking find me and be like, holy shit, this is the man.
Okay.
This is what man once was.
So
And
I'm,
if 10,000 years from now, there wouldn't be ancient aliens.
Yes.
I'm going to say that we should put aside everybody wanting to somehow be reincarnated.
Well, no, I don't want to be reincarnated. I just want to be. I want to be.
You want to be the
Go
guy.
Han Solo in the slab.
The testament
you wanna
to
be-
humanity's existence.
So what you're saying is you want to be on the cover of an alien civilization's Time magazine
Yes.
for discovering like the
Other species found,
yeah.
and it's just boof flipping everybody.
we
This
wonder what
face.
it means.
This face, not emaciated, not like skinnied from like being wrapped as a mummy. This face.
So you're going for the long-term
Yes.
Time magazine.
Oh my god.
Like,
I will put money aside for
Put
that
like
to
a blood
happen.
sign on here.
What year is it? 2020? By 2070?
you know, by
Sure.
30.
No,
By 30. Let's say like half a century from now, we have that technology.
Oh.
It's extremely expensive. I will put money away for that.
Oh
How
my
about that?
All right, Rob.
Besides from boofs, which I really like the idea of being frozen and potentially coming back to life, or potentially being the face of man, I actually do not care what people do with my body, and I've said that a plethora of times. I prefer. I was talking to Christian and his girlfriend the other day. If you want to take my body and like have the skeletal remains dancing at a party after my death, I don't give a fuck what you guys do with my body. Seriously, you can take it from them and just put it in a dumpster.
Would you prefer that though? Would you prefer there to be some entertainment value? From
I
your
think it'd
body?
be funny if you guys
I want my
like.
dead body to swing
So
around
then
in a
you do
fan.
have a preference.
But with the preface that I want my organs to be donated, and I want every usable organ to be donated. So if I'm just down to bones, then sure, make me into a mannequin and dance me around at a party.
Can we turn him into a chair?
Yes.
As long as my organs get donated.
And that means that Rob, even in death, will still be supporting his teammates.
Still carrying.
Still be
reinforce your bones.
My back will still hurt.
We're gonna take your bones and dip them in metal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, Silas.
I don't care. I want to just be cremated and you do whatever with my dust. I
It
don't
was
care.
very unchristian of you.
I don't listen. All right, donate my body to science.
That's very unchristian of
You
you.
stop that.
Okay, guys. Everybody say the wrap up, and then I'm going to tease an idea I have.
So, in all honesty, I would rather just probably be buried. But I do think that the opinions of the dead and the wishes of the dead do matter simply because those who are around them care about them.
Okay. Like I said, I feel that the wishes of the dead do matter up to a certain point, but I feel like if you've affected the cultural zeitgeist to a point where your work has become intertwined with popular culture, you don't get to say no one can have this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if your wishes interfere too much with the broader populace, you get to be ignored because you're dead and you don't care anymore.
Exactly. I really feel that you should, as a personal objective for everyone, you should do the least amount of like troubling other people post mortem. So I just want to be cremated, organs donated to science or to others, and just live, go on with the life.
Okay, I have a very nuanced opinion on the wishes of the dead. I think the body is essentially should be...
It's free game.
Yeah, it's kind of free game, but not quite free game. But an idea I had while we were doing this is the Graeyzone goes to Zane Catacombs in West Bloomfield.
Oh!
And we do a video and we go and check out these catacombs.
I
That
like
would be
that.
really cool.
So
That'd
stay
be-
tuned for that. If we can get that done, it's hard in COVID times, but it looks like they still open.
What
so.
could possibly go wrong? We've already turned this very morbid subject to a massive laughing stock. So let's go to the catacombs
I mean, it's
and see.
2020 at this point. Just screw it all.
So thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes.
Hope you liked it.
Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought.
And be safe out there during COVID.
Yes, or else this whole episode might be referring to you.
Yeah.
Until next time, I'm Silas. I'm Christian.
I'm Raouf.
And I'm Rob.
And this has been The Graeyzone.
Bye.